The night air was thick with summer heat, the kind that clung to the skin even after the sun had long disappeared. Renee Dawson, a 42-year-old black woman with a dignified presence and a quiet strength that came from years of service in the Marine Corps, gripped the steering wheel as she guided her car down a two-lane highway just outside the city. Her headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating patches of cracked asphalt and the occasional reflective road sign. To the casual eye, she was just another woman driving home late, but to Renee, every mile carried with it the weight of memory, resilience, and survival. She wasn't just a passenger on this road, she was a fighter who had walked through fire and carried her scars like medals. The radio played softly, an old blues song her father used to hum when he was fixing the family's broken-down truck in the driveway. Music had always been her anchor, but tonight, her mind drifted elsewhere. She thought about her late husband, also a veteran, who never made it back from deployment. She thought about her son, who had just started college, and how proud he made her. And she thought about the years she had spent in uniform, defending a country that too often looked at her skin before her service. Still, Renee held her head high. She had lived long enough to know that dignity wasn't given. It was claimed. Up ahead, the faint glow of flashing red and blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror, growing brighter with each passing second. Renee felt her chest tighten. She had done nothing wrong. She knew her tags were up to date, her speed steady, her headlights on. And yet, like so many people who looked like her, she knew that being innocent was not always enough. She signaled, slowed down, and eased her car to the shoulder. Gravel crunched beneath her tires as the cruiser pulled up behind her. Her training kicked in. Deep breath, hands at 10 and 2, dome lights switched on. She moved with calm precision, not out of fear, but out of instinct. She had spent years teaching young Marines about discipline and preparedness. Now, in the dim glow of her car's cabin, she practiced what she had preached. The officer approached slowly, his boots heavy against the gravel. His flashlight beam darted across her rear window, scanned the interior, then landed on her face. "License and registration," he barked, the tone sharp and impatient. Renee met his eyes briefly, before reaching, with deliberate slowness, for her purse on the passenger seat. "Yes, officer," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm reaching for my license now." The officer scoffed. "Don't tell me what you're doing, just do it." Something in his tone wasn't right. Renee knew the difference between authority and arrogance. This man, Officer Briggs, she would later learn, carried himself not with the confidence of someone sworn to protect, but with the swagger of someone who believed he couldn't be touched. His flashlight shook slightly as he leaned closer, peering into her car as if searching for trouble. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "Home. From work." "What kind of work?" His lip curled, like the question itself was an accusation. Renee felt the sting, but she refused to flinch. She had faced worse than this. Sandstorms, firefights, the weight of a flag folded over a coffin. She would face this too. Briggs shifted, tapping his flashlight against the roof of her car. "Step out of the vehicle." "Is there a problem, officer?" Renee asked, her brow furrowing slightly. "Don't question me. Step out." The command echoed in the night, loud enough to make her pulse quicken. She unbuckled her seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out onto the gravel. The night air was hotter now, suffocating. She stood tall, her posture instinctively straight, shoulders back, chin lifted, just as she had during countless inspections in the Marines. But this was no ceremony. This was a performance of survival. Briggs circled her car, shining his flashlight across the seats, the floor, the glove compartment. "You got drugs in here? Weapons? Maybe something you don't want me to find?" "No, officer," Renee said firmly. He smirked. "We'll see about that." He radioed for backup, his words casual, almost gleeful. Within minutes, another patrol car pulled up, lights flashing like a warning to the night. Two more officers stepped out, younger, less confident. They flanked Briggs as he leaned closer to Renee. "You look nervous. Something you're hiding?" Renee met his eyes without wavering. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm standing here, cooperating." But Briggs wasn't looking for cooperation. He was looking for control. He moved closer, invading her space, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "Women like you think you're tough, but out here on this road, in the middle of the night, you're nothing without my say-so." The words sank like venom. Renee clenched her jaw, reminding herself not to react. She had faced worse than this. Sandstorms, firefights, the weight of a flag folded over a coffin. She would face this too. The backup officers shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Silence was complicity, Renee thought. They knew he was out of line, but their loyalty wasn't to justice. It was to the badge on his chest. Then, without warning, Briggs grabbed her wrist as he twisted it, as he snapped handcuffs around her wrists. The cold metal bit into her skin. "You're under arrest," Renee demanded, her voice still calm but edged with steel. "For what?" "You'll find out," he sneered. The younger officers exchanged glances, but neither spoke. One opened the back door of the cruiser and Briggs shoved her inside. As the door slammed shut, Renee stared out the window at the dark highway. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the knowledge of what this meant. This wasn't just about her. This was about every person who had ever been judged by the color of their skin before the content of their character. As the car pulled away, she closed her eyes and whispered a prayer her father had taught her long ago. "Lord, grant me the strength to stand when others want me to fall." And though her wrists were bound and her freedom stolen, her spirit remained unbroken. For Renee Dawson knew one thing with absolute certainty. This story wasn't over. The police station smelled of stale coffee, disinfectant, and something heavier, like despair left too long in the air. Renee Dawson was marched inside, her wrists still bound, her footsteps echoing against the tiled floor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering in places, casting a sickly glow on walls that had seen too many lives pass through in chains. Briggs walked a step ahead of her, chest puffed, arrogance radiating from every stride. He acted like he had just taken down a threat to society, when in reality, all he had done was humiliate a woman who had given more to this country than he could ever imagine. The booking process was slow and deliberate, almost designed to strip away dignity. They took her fingerprints, her photograph, her belongings. Her wedding ring, the one she had worn for 20 years, was placed in a small plastic bag with a number printed on it. For a moment, Renee felt naked without it. That ring wasn't just jewelry, it was memory, sacrifice, love that endured even after death. As she signed the paperwork, her hand shook, not with fear, but with suppressed anger. "This is what it comes down to," she thought. "Service, sacrifice, loyalty, and still I'm treated like a criminal because of one man's prejudice." They led her to a holding cell, the heavy door clanging shut behind her. Inside, a flickering light revealed cracked walls, a metal bench bolted to the floor, and graffiti carved into the paint. Names, dates, pleas for freedom. Renee sat quietly, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. The cell was cold, but her mind was burning. She thought about her son, who would be waking up soon and wondering why she hadn't texted him good night. She thought about the veterans she worked with every day, men and women who carried trauma in silence, and wondered if they would believe her story. Hours passed. Briggs returned, smirking, holding a thin file. He leaned against the bars and said, "You'll be facing charges in the morning. Resisting arrest, suspicion of drug possession, disorderly conduct. It won't look good for you." Renee raised an eyebrow. "And what evidence do you have of any of that?" Briggs sneered. "Evidence is what I say it is." The word struck her like a blow. It wasn't just corruption, it was audacity. He believed he could twist reality itself, that his badge gave him the power to rewrite truth. Renee leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "You may think you have the upper hand, officer, but you've underestimated me. I've faced men who tried to kill me with real weapons. You're armed with lies, and lies eventually collapse." For the first time, Briggs faltered. His smirk twitched, his confidence flickered. He slammed the file shut and walked away without another word. When morning came, the sound of jangling keys pulled Renee from her half-sleep. She was escorted to a small courtroom inside the precinct. The room was crowded. Officers, clerks, a judge sitting high above, and a prosecutor ready with files stacked neatly on the table. Briggs stood off to the side, whispering smugly to a colleague, clearly anticipating her downfall. The judge, an older man with sharp glasses and a weary expression, glanced at the paperwork. Case number 5621, Renee Dawson. Charges: resisting arrest, obstruction, disorderly conduct. It won't look good for you. Renee stood tall, her marine discipline evident in every movement. "Your Honor, these charges are false." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. The prosecutor smirked. The judge raised a brow. "False, you say?" "Yes," Renee said firmly. "I was pulled over without cause, accused without evidence, and arrested because of one man's prejudice. I've served this country for 20 years. I know what honor looks like, and this isn't it." Briggs chuckled under his breath. The prosecutor leaned forward, ready to pounce. "Your Honor, the defendant is attempting to paint herself as a victim, but the evidence—" "Show the evidence," Renee interrupted. Her voice carried across the room, calm but commanding. The prosecutor froze for a second, caught off guard by her boldness. He shuffled his papers, flipping through the file, but there was nothing substantial, just vague statements, no physical proof, no footage that supported the claims. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Officer Briggs, where is the body cam footage?" Briggs stammered. Technical issue, Your Honor. Malfunctioned." "Malfunctioned?" The judge's tone sharpened. "Or conveniently missing." The room grew tense. Renee seized the moment. "Your Honor, I don't stand here just as a defendant. I stand here as someone who has spent her life defending the principles of justice. If this courtroom values truth, then truth must be shown. And if it won't be shown today, then I will reveal it myself." Gasps rippled through the audience. The judge leaned back, intrigued despite himself. "And how do you plan to do that, Ms. Dawson?" Renee took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been holding in her chest since the night began. She locked eyes with the judge, her voice unwavering. "Because I'm not just Renee Dawson, the accused. I'm Attorney Dawson, licensed, trained, and sworn to uphold the law. And today, I will be representing myself." The room erupted. The prosecutor nearly dropped his papers. Briggs went pale. The judge's expression shifted from irritation to stunned disbelief. For the first time since her arrest, Renee felt the tide turn, not just for her case, but for every silent injustice that had gone unchallenged. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was battle, and Renee was ready to fight. The silence after Renee's declaration hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. For a long moment, no one moved. The prosecutor blinked rapidly, his lips parting but no words escaping. Briggs shifted uneasily, his earlier confidence cracking like glass under pressure. The judge leaned forward, his pen tapping slowly against the desk as he studied her. "You're telling this court," the judge said finally, "that you are a licensed attorney?" "Yes, Your Honor," Renee replied, her voice steady. "For the past 8 years, I've practiced law, specializing in civil rights and criminal defense. Before that, I served 2 decades in the United States Marine Corps. I know what justice means, and I know what injustice smells like. What I experienced last night was the latter. Gasps rustled through the courtroom. A few of the younger officers glanced at each other nervously. Briggs swallowed hard, his face flushing. The prosecutor tried to recover, flipping desperately through his file. "Your Honor, with respect, this is highly irregular. The defendant can't simply—" "She absolutely can," the judge interrupted sharply. His gaze flicked from the prosecutor to Renee. "Every citizen has the right to self-representation, though it is rarely done with this much confidence." He leaned back in his chair. "Proceed, Ms. Dawson." Renee stepped forward, no longer shackled by the title of defendant, but standing firmly as an advocate for herself. She placed her hands on the defense table, her posture military straight, her presence commanding. "Your Honor, members of this court, the charges against me are not just baseless, they are fabrications designed to protect the pride of one officer who believed his badge gave him the right to abuse authority. What we are witnessing here isn't law, it's ego. And today, I intend to prove it." She turned toward Briggs, who was already squirming. "Officer Briggs claims I resisted arrest, yet he offers no evidence beyond his word. Where is the body cam footage that protocol requires? Conveniently missing. Where are the dash cam recordings? Silent. Where are the testimonies of other officers on scene? Non-existent. Why? Because none of it supports his story." "Objection," the prosecutor objected, but the judge held up a hand. "Overruled. Continue." Renee paced slowly, her eyes sweeping across the room. "The truth is simple. I was pulled over for no reason other than the color of my skin. I complied with every instruction. I did not resist. I did not obstruct. And when I asked a simple question, 'Why am I being stopped?' Officer Briggs chose to take offense, escalate, and invent charges to justify his actions." Murmurs spread among the audience. Briggs' jaw tightened. "You see, this case isn't about me," Renee continued, her voice growing stronger with every word. "It's about a system that too often allows assumptions to become verdicts and prejudice to masquerade as law. It's about how easily an innocent person can be branded guilty simply because someone in power says so. But the law, true law, demands evidence, not ego." The judge tapped his pen again, thoughtful now, watching closely. Renee reached into her folder, the one they hadn't bothered to check when booking her. From it, she pulled a stack of documents. "I came prepared, Your Honor. This is my record of service. 2 decades of honorable military service, commendations for leadership, certificates of training, and here," she held up another set of papers, "is my license to practice law in this very state. I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and I take that oath far more seriously than Officer Briggs takes his." The room erupted again in whispers. Briggs looked as though he might bolt for the door. The prosecutor sat frozen, his face pale. Renee turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I request immediate dismissal of all charges on the grounds of lack of evidence, malicious prosecution, and violation of my civil rights. Furthermore, I ask that Officer Briggs' conduct be reviewed by Internal Affairs, as his actions not only jeopardized my freedom, but also dishonored the integrity of this court." The judge leaned forward, his gaze sharp on Briggs. "Officer, do you have anything to say in response to these claims?" Briggs stuttered, his usual bravado gone. I thought she was acting suspicious." "Suspicious because I was driving home from work? Suspicious because I asked a question? Or suspicious because I don't fit your idea of who belongs in a Mercedes at night?" The silence that followed was deafening. Briggs' face burned crimson. The judge slammed his gavel once. "Enough. I've heard all I need to hear." He turned to Renee. "Ms. Dawson, your motion is granted. All charges are dismissed." The courtroom gasped again, but the judge wasn't finished. He shifted his gaze to Briggs. "Officer, consider yourself officially under review. This court does not tolerate misconduct, prejudice, or the abuse of power. Your badge is not a shield for arrogance. It is a responsibility, and one you have clearly failed." Briggs' shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than ever. His authority evaporated. Renee exhaled slowly, relief mixed with triumph. But she wasn't done. She faced the room one final time. "Let today be a reminder. Justice isn't about who shouts the loudest or who wears the badge. It's about truth. It's about fairness. And it's about holding accountable those who believe themselves untouchable. We must all demand better, because if we don't, none of us are safe." The judge nodded, his expression solemn. "Well said, Miss Dawson. This court stands adjourned." The gavel struck, but the echo it left behind wasn't just the sound of a case closing. It was the sound of a system cracking open, if only for a moment, to let light in. As people began to file out of the courtroom, some approached Renee quietly. A clerk whispered, "Thank you." A younger officer, no older than her son, avoided Briggs' gaze and mouthed respect. Even the judge, before leaving, gave her a small nod of acknowledgement, not as a defendant, but as a peer. Renee gathered her belongings slowly, savoring the silence that followed the storm. She wasn't naive. She knew the battle wasn't over. There would be backlash, whispers, attempts to discredit her. But she also knew something had shifted. She had stood her ground, revealed the truth, and reminded everyone in that room that power without accountability is nothing more than tyranny. As she walked out into the morning sun, free at last, Renee Dawson didn't just feel victorious, she felt renewed. The fight for justice wasn't just her profession, it was her calling, and now more than ever, she was ready to answer it. Because in the end, this wasn't just her story. It was a story for every voice silenced, every truth buried, every person who had ever been told their dignity could be dismissed. And Renee Dawson was determined to make sure those stories would never be ignored again.